I kept telling you, no plus. He couldn't hit. He's swinging like a sissy. He's missing. Let me see your bus. I hadn't started dancing yet. A tremendous sensational first round, and Burns gets hurt. Burns got blood. Tackle was done early in the round. Great first round. Incredible. Perhaps one of the best in middleweight history.
Bang, 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 bang,
Oh, welcome back, everybody. Or should I say, welcome? I should be welcoming myself back to you all. It is your host, the one and only G.Alé Dampierre. And I'm joined by that famous pain in the ass of Ring IQ.
How am I
Julius
pain in the ass?
Fox.
Why pain in the ass?
Why do you gotta be the pain in the ass? I mean, come on. Let's be real here.
Hey man,
You are quite the agitator on the page.
How am I an agitator? I say what I think, and that agitates people. Then they don't need to be worrying about what I think.
Well, that's always going to have to be worried about anyway, seeing that, you, like I said, are the main protagonists. You go out there, somebody's got to rebuke it, and, then all of a sudden, it's fucking war IQ all over again.
Real shit, it's war IQ.
Yeah, no, sometimes it'd be civil war. You got to come in here and keep the peace. So, speaking of peace being kept, got some housekeeping to do now. Obviously, just to lay up the lineup here, and the title should alone itself mention everything that we're going to be covering today. Anthony Joshua's victory over replacement Carlos Takam, got the TKO. And also Deontay Wilder, who'll be having his rematch against Bermane Stiverne this Saturday on Showtime. And then, of course, also, who is it? Yeah, Luis Ortiz. King Kong gets the can by the WBA.
Yeah, but the WBC, you see how they. Well, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, very conditional favoritism, of course. Always playing a role, man. If it isn't a sanctioning body doing it, it's damn near the fucking state commissions. But yeah, we'll get all into it. And pretty much, I mean, this is really much heavyweights centered. But it also, not to forget, Sean Porter versus Adrian Granados is also featured on Saturday's fight. And I do believe who else was fighting? Oh, yeah, of course, Dillian White last week on the undercard, and Katie Taylor, who is now a world champion.
Yeah, and don't forget about Brazil versus Molina. That's going on tomorrow, too.
Yes, how did I forget? I knew I was forgetting one of them. And yeah, that should, the winner of that fight possibly definitely getting the winner of Wilder and Stiverne. So let's jump into it, starting with Anthony Joshua. You're going to go from the top of the card down from Saturday night. Anthony Joshua beats Carlos Takam by TKO. Many saying it was a very early stoppage, but I mean, considering what the fight was on the face of it, a replacement fighter about, what was it, 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks notice. Carlos Takam, not necessarily a world beater, but a respected journeyman. I think that's the most dignified way of putting it. Most recently gave Parker his a challenging fight for his title, I believe. I think that's actually Parker's most famous win, honestly, at this point, or at least his most impressive, should I say?
Well, it wasn't. Well, let's put it this way: it wasn't an impressive win, but it was a big scalp. But it was, Parker was. That was actually one of the first fights where people started saying, Parker needs to get it together, because he made him look bad. He made him look pretty bad. Some people thought he won.
Hey, look, I thought Andy Ruiz won.
You're not alone.
So,
I'm not saying I agree with you. I'm just saying I know some people that do.
Yeah, and I mean, he's just another one among the champions. I feel like that's food right now. Pretty much the main entree of the heavyweight division right now. has to be Parker. And depending on who's here, we can debate about if that's Deontay Wilder second up. If he's second course. But if you ask Eddie Hearn, he apparently is. But let's go ahead and get into this fight. Anthony Joshua gets an early knockdown of Carlos Takam in the 4th round. After getting headbutted in the 2nd, definitely showing a bit of agitation with that. I don't think they ever really confirmed it. Did they say that headbutt did break his nose, or that it didn't? There was conflicting reports.
I didn't see confirmation of that, but I missed those early rounds. I came in at about round 3, and it looked. I mean, for what it's worth, from round 3 and on, I didn't see where a punch could have caused that bloody nose, so I assumed it was the headbutt.
Well, for certain. I mean, you can see just how bothered Joshua was right away when that once they collided with his nose.
Yeah.
And there's immediate leakage. So for certain, it's definitely the head. But that's what I was just working out the severity of it. But it wasn't much for him to at least to hamper him down the line. It looks like he was actually trying to step on the gas a little bit more after that headbutt, and like I said, was able to get that knockdown. Caught him with a nice little 2-piece. And actually what I liked about that knockdown by Anthony Joshua was pretty much just his overall defense and how compact he was to get that knockdown.
Yeah.
Actually, throughout the whole fight, I mean, he was very tight. Tight and probably if you hear in prior podcasts, not the way that I always criticized him to be, almost like stiff and robotic. But it was the compact, and as far as there was no hole in his guard.
That's exactly, and that's the same thing that I said on the relay, that a lot of people are looking to be critical, but what I noticed about it and what I liked about it is this is a big guy that was able to fight defensively on the inside, and he didn't give Takam a lot of openings. Those hooks were very tight, very defensible. Takam is throwing punches, but they're gliding off the shoulder or they're going behind Joshua's head. They're not hitting the mark, and I like that this is a big guy that can fight, close quarters or outside, and he's still defensible. He's not getting hit. So to me, it was a very good showing. He was a lot less robotic. He was a lot more fluent. The punches were flowing, and we've been seeing that more and more with Anthony Joshua. So for anybody to really construe that as a bad showing just because it was an early stoppage, because that stoppage was early. You've seen it.
Yeah, absolutely. See, and that's the unfortunate thing, because I feel like the result of the fight can easily just hamper what actually transpired throughout the fight. Now, like you're saying, the fight being stopped early didn't mean that Joshua wasn't having his way throughout the fight. I still, even with that, couldn't see around to give Takam. That being said, he was very game, which was good to see. And I never really anticipated, there's some who were really giving a lot of praise to Takam for, not just showing up for a check. Which, I mean, I would, if knowing anything about Takam, I would, you would know to never think that about him. Definitely, was game. A lot of activity, was definitely trying to stay in the fight. But, he just really couldn't pierce that guard too much of Anthony Joshua. Like you said, was, again, just seems to be getting better and better every time we see him, which is my main criticism toward not Anthony Joshua, but Deontay Wilder, is that since his Stavern fight where he's acquired the title, it seems I haven't seen much development. Here with Anthony Joshua, there's something being added every time.
Yeah.
Or at least it's not even saying nothing necessarily being added to his arsenal, but the development is coming together.
Well, I'll say that the right uppercut is looking more and more like a money punch. It's a very nice compact uppercut. There's a lot of power behind it. I think he's going to be, if they ever make another boxing video game, I think that's going to be his signature punch. They always give a guy a signature punch. Could be a big left hook, could be a straight right hand. I think Anthony's signature punch, if there were a video game, would be the right uppercut. It always finds a home. It's nice. It's compact. It's defensible, which is what's really important. And it always finds a home. You know what I mean? What I liked about Anthony Joshua is this is a big guy that can fight at any range you fight him. You can fight him close quarters. He can fight there. And that's going to be important if and when he fights Deontay Wilder, because he's got to take that range away from Wilder. Wilder's dangerous, you know. Well, let's not get too into that. Let's not get too into that. Because we talking about last weekend and this weekend.
Well, I mean, the closer we get toward, I guess, toward wrapping things up with Anthony and Joshua, we can get toward there. But where actually, I'm glad that you actually brought that up as far as, you know, that lethal uppercut of Anthony Joshua. Now, in this fight, he got the knockdown actually from a left hook, was, again, a great setup. It looked like it was more or less a baiting right hand that got partially blocked, that he eventually turned it into being a high guard on his right side, and pretty much just provided all the torque for his left hook that put Takam pretty much almost on his ass. Now, seeing how that was set up and other punches, at least that you see that are his go-to, obviously the right hand is always the first one he's looking to get through, you know, in this starting, you know, the beginnings of the fight. So my question towards you is, seeing what we saw this past weekend, and obviously you do have the admiration for that uppercut. Other than the uppercut, I mean, because I feel like that might be your answer anyway, but what do you feel like is his go-to, the pretty much like the capper, the, you know, the haymaker itself, his number one punch for Anthony Joshua?
Well, I mean, more often than not, you know, what we see Anthony Joshua try to do a lot is land the straight right hand, but that doesn't always work. And we saw that with Takam. It wasn't always working. Takam was, you know, this is why I give Takam credit, because like you said, he didn't just come for a check. He brought something to the table. Takam can move. He could fight on the front foot or the back foot. He's a decent fighter if you've seen him before. He had Parker fighting on the back foot. But when it comes to Joshua, I think Joshua's primary objective is to get that straight right hand. If he can't get that, he'll find something else, and that's what I like about him. Because remember, this is a guy that before that fight only had 19 fights, but look at how he's getting. Look at how he's becoming.
And look at actually upon how he has it set up. I mean, that's where the most critique was always coming from, is how he really put his punches together, and he was so stiff. You know, like, I mean, there's a big difference that you see the way you see him set up his punches now than the way he did back then. Exactly. Totally different, totally fluid. I mean, it doesn't seem like he's, you know, like fucking bodybuilder that just slipped on gloves.
Robot where he's just standing up completely fucking straight, shooting a jab and then a straight.
Exactly.
And the problem that I always had with, you know, these guys, you know, I can't talk to a lot of guys because they would hear me say this and get upset. And what I'm saying is, look, not that long ago, we were talking about a guy, 15 fights. You expect him to be perfect in 15 fights? You know, you got guys that make excuses for guys that have more fights than that. This is a guy that, you know, he just hit his 20th professional fight. So there's going to be kinks and there's going to be flaws. But for where he is right now, he's in a very good place because he's getting better. He's getting a lot better very quickly. He's gaining confidence. His punches are more fluid. He's more defensible. So there's not a lot to pick apart there when you remember that this is a guy that only has 20 fights.
Essentially,
these are 20 fights at the world level, not 20 fights journeyman. No, these are 20 fights at the world level. These guys are ranked, okay? These ain't club fighters.
Yeah, and you think about it, at least in terms of his access, what was it? Probably about the 17th fight, or should I even 16th, is actually where at that point, like, journeymen were over. It's he's pretty much started beating, you know, legitimate world-class competition with 17 fights.
Look. Erkin Tepper, Dylan White, Dominic Brazil, all undefeated fighters. Okay, he fought 4, I believe it is. I believe it's 4, and those were world level guys. Those weren't club fighters. That's why I constantly remind people that, like, dog, like, these wasn't, you know, these ain't guys at your local gym that he was fighting, you know. So don't take things out of context if he doesn't always look perfect. He's not always going to look perfect because he only had fights. How do you expect a guy to look perfect with that many pro fights? You have that expectation of every guy that, oh, well, by your 15th fight, you should be perfect. I shouldn't be able to pick apart what you're doing.
See, when you low key have standards that high for somebody, then that means you pretty much low key, respect what they do, or that you are that is already an acknowledgement that they are pretty damn good for what they are.
Yeah.
In short, now, in total, Anthony Joshua's had a stellar 2017. Obviously, the most notable Vladimir Klitschko win that he was able to seal off, and since has really blossomed into, or at least I can't even say is becoming, because I feel like he's there now. He's at legit global stardom at this point, which is why I have the title AJ having the world by the short and curlies. This guy has now sponsorships, probably the biggest TV deal, has just sold out stadiums. I mean, and there was been, I remember there was actually an argument on the page about, if does Anthony Joshua need the United States? Because obviously that's always been the pull for him to get big over in the UK, where he can get some type of following over here, to where he would really make it big once he can do a USA show, probably with more or less. And it's funny because now that seeing the way it's going to play out now, it seemed like it's going to be reversed for what Deontay Wilder is going to have to do, which is what I was going to say, is have some type of notable name in the United States as your warm-up, and then eventually the big star of the United States, which would have been Deontay Wilder, and have that showdown and somewhere in Vegas. Now it's seeming like Deontay Wilder is going to have to go over to the UK, take the warm-up, which would be Dillian White, which we'll get into later on with this, and then make the big fight there in the UK.
Think about it. Deontay Wilder's the guy that needs the money fight. Anthony Joshua is the money fight, right? So when we see that, there is a push to get Joshua over here to corner this market, it's not that he needs that push. It's just that Eddie Hearn wants it. They don't need it. They're already making more money than any other heavyweight in the division. They don't need to come here. They just want to because, well, we're making millions over here. Now we want to make millions over there. As far as the word need, well, that sounds a lot like a four-letter word, because everybody's knocking on his door. If he felt so inclined, and not come over here, if he felt so inclined, they need him. He don't need them. So when I hear that, that they are coming to America, I feel that perception is being misconstrued. Like, yeah, they want to come over here. I get that they want to, but they don't have to. Okay. It's not like Wilder. He's not in Wilder's situation where he needs to make a name for himself. He already has a fucking name. All right? Remember, this guy was in a commercial with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Kevin Hart.
Yeah.
Okay? He got, he beats by Dre. He got that shit. Dr. Dre contacted him after the Klitschko fight. Okay?
And before the Klitschko fight.
Yeah, before the Klitschko. My fault. That was before the Klitschko fight. So, need is not the right word. Want, that's the right. They want to come here. They want to make money here, but they don't need to come here because the heavyweight division. I mean, we see Parker. That's the Southern Hemisphere. They knocking on Joshua's door, and we already know Wilder's knocking on his door, and he's knocking on his door really fucking hard. The harder Wilder knocks on his door, the more you realize who needs who.
Now, now that we're on the subject of this, because I've seen the equivalents for this, that at least it's been drawn up, and I would give this credit to the point of the ever shit-stirring Joseph Glover, that it was okay to provide the conditions in the A-side terms when it comes to Anthony Joshua, but different when it comes to Canelo Alvarez. I feel like there's quite a few major difference in between that whole scenario, what worked out with Golovkin, and what's going on here with Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder. for me, the first being that legitimately not that many people know who the hell Deontay Wilder is, as far as that trying to be a market of any type of pull or any type of negotiation at all to even dictate anything. So, I mean, that alone gives him no leg to stand on when it comes to anything, about that. And then in consideration that Anthony Joshua is probably even, I don't know if for me, I feel like I don't think it's much debate because I feel like Canelo Alvarez is more recognized on this side of the Atlantic. But I feel like Anthony Joshua is probably the biggest star in boxing right now. Now that going head to head with Canelo Alvarez, and on top of that, you're just some marginalized heavyweight champion that many people are still waiting to have the jury out on you as far as your skills go. It's there's just a lot that's just not working for Wilder for you to tell me that, like, oh, well, it's just being conditional if you think that A-side terms only are beholden to Anthony Joshua and not Canelo Alvarez.
Well, look, these are the same guys that justified all manner of fuckery from Canelo Alvarez, because that's what we got in 2016. We got fuckery, straight fuckery. Now, Anthony Joshua hasn't even started fuckerying yet. He hasn't even started yet. I don't know if he will. I don't know if he won't. But I know that he hasn't started yet. This was a guy that already – and I told guys in 2016, this guy's probably going to have a full plate or something like that. Like, watch, whatever. But you can't get mad if Joshua – this is for those guys. Because fuckery is fuckery to me and you. I know that. Fuckery is fuckery. If Joshua behaves himself the way that Canelo behaved himself, I'm going to call it fuckery. Regardless, it was fuckery when Canelo did it, and I'll view it as fuckery if Joshua does it. But to those guys spent a lot of time trying to convince people that it's not fuckery, and that's the way it goes, and he dictates the terms, and he can do whatever he wants. Well, guess what? The same applies to Joshua. If you were okay with Canelo doing all that bullshit, you shouldn't be sitting here complaining if Joshua does that bullshit. Now, me and you, we can complain. Why? Because when Canelo did it, we complained. We said, well, what the fuck is this? You just don't want to fight that guy. So if I see Joshua doing that shit, which I still haven't.
I was going to say, he hasn't. I don't even think he's even been given an opportunity to even been called a bullshitter yet. Exactly. It ain't like he called out. It's not like he sat in the ring and called out Deontay Wilder, hey, you're next. And then he fought Carlos Takam right after or anything. Exactly. None of that actually even been displayed yet. He actually has said he plans on it. I mean, and the way that him and Eddie Hearn talk about it, I totally see how they want to, shape this up. Like, why not give this a proper build-up?
There's no tangible reason for anyone to be skeptical. See, with Canelo Alvarez, you had every reason to be skeptical. Dog, he fought Amir Khan, okay? Then he left the whole weight class for. Imagine if Anthony Joshua left heavyweight, dropped his titles, left heavyweight, and went down to cruiser. How would you look at that? How would not you? How would they look at that? How would they look at that? Like, yo, this motherfucker done left the weight class. But they get mad at me. They get mad at me when I say, look, he was fucking ducking, bro. Okay, you left the whole weight class. Then you jumped over the weight class. Anthony Joshua can't go any higher. But think about it. They were okay with all of that. They were. They co-signed off on all of that. So how the fuck do you turn around and get mad now over your interpretation? Because like I said, he hasn't done anything. He just satisfied his mandatory to keep his title. You mad? What the fuck was he supposed to do? Give it to Takam? Give it to Pulev? What, you want to see Pulev, IBF champion?
And that'll still be backed by the same people who will go with Wilder, who actually hadn't fought a mandatory in fucking years. Up till tomorrow night is probably the first time he's actually fighting a mandatory. As long as he's had this title, they've all been voluntaries.
And I don't give him I don't give him shit for that, because I know that it's not his fault. It's just that conversations end up getting mixed. When we talk about Wilder's resume, and I say, look, this guy hadn't fought a mandatory in ever. All right, I'm talking about what's actually on his resume. Now, is that his fault?
No, it's not his fault. We know what happened. We know the circumstances. But his resume is his resume. So if I hold up his resume next to somebody else's resume, this is what I got. And I'm sorry, it's not impressive. What do you want me to do? Took you 32 fights to fight for a world title. Look how long it's taking for you to fight a real solid #1 contender. And fuck me that it's the guy you already beat. I know it's not his fault. I know it's not his fault. But his resume,
and you know what? And that's the thing. I don't really blame it either, but I mean,
it's his resume, bro. It's his resume. It's not your fault. George didn't do it.
Yeah,
I didn't do it. That's his resume.
That shit. That's just an ugly ass resume, bro. Like you do whatever it takes. I don't care. I don't care if if that's the case. Then dudes are just gonna pop up dirty. Then my activity is just going up. It's like, all right, cool. We're banging out 3 to 4 fights a year.
But look, let's not act like Wilder's been inactive. He hasn't. He hasn't been inactive. He's been fighting. Have we liked who he's fighting? No. But isn't this what we told Rigo to do? We did tell Rigo to do this. That look, all right, you can't get the guys that you want to get. All right, fight #7, fight #8, fight. That's why I'm not super mad at that. What I get mad at is, look, don't berate Joshua's resume because his resume is stellar for where he is in his career. Understand, this guy just had 20 fights. Most guys are still fighting journeyman right now. He's not. So his resume is solid. Joseph Parker's resume looks better than Wilder's. Lucas Brown's resume looks better than Wilder's. That's the way it is. I didn't do it. Lucas Brown has James Toney on his resume.
Fucking okay. Brian Jennings.
He's got Brian Jennings. Well, who beat Brian Jennings? Well, Vlad beat Brian Jennings.
You say Vlad beat him, and damn, who else just beat him? Or didn't Luis Ortiz beat him? But he don't count no more.
Yeah, Ortiz beat him right after. Well, not right after because he had some time off, but he beat him right after Vlad beat him. So that's why I always looked at that victory as kind of, it's okay. Brian Jennings is a solid guy, but I'm not ready to show my nipples over that shit. Like, all right, your biggest, because I said this. There's videos, like, dog, I got videos for days. I said his 2 biggest wins are Tony Thompson, who's old. Well, not old, but he's not young. Let's just, let's cut the crap. He's not young, and he was coming off a loss. And then Brian Jennings, who was also coming off a loss. But those were the fights. His performances in those fights is literally where the hype came from. They weren't talking about him like that up until those fights. So if your biggest win, because that's how people are treating it, is Brian Jennings off a loss and Tony Thompson off a loss, then those eggs need more bacon. I always said that shit, like, he's a good fighter, but he's another one that, like, the jury's out. We don't know what's gonna happen if you put him in there with Wilder. We all have our theories, but I've said this many times. He makes Wilder look bad till the knockout comes, because Ortiz would get comfortable how Spilker got comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Spilker got comfortable and threw a left hand that was so wide I could have fit this couch on it. I could have fit this fucking couch right here on that shit.
Well, speaking of, I had a perfect segue to ride off with that, but I gotta get to this last point before we, leave Anthony Joshua as is. So forecasting 2018 for Anthony Joshua. Now the way that Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua, I guess, confirmed just on a report today by Boxing Scene that they'll be meeting up on this Tuesday to run through the plan of how they're going to map out their whole 2018. Now, if you're Eddie Hearn, how do you go about this? Now, for me, this is how I have it planned out. We do a respectable voluntary or mandatory challenge or mandatory for any of the titles. I would say in the span from January to March. Then in that second spring to summer phase, we get Joseph Parker in there. And if there is time for the bill, actually, I feel like that would be the perfect time to just let that late summer buzz into the fall for Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder unification. Can king of the king, basically. I mean, that's the true crowning of the main championship there, even though only one fighter is bringing in just one title. But still, either way, I still feel like those are all still very favorable. That's the way I feel like Eddie Hearn is going to try to have this mapped out. I don't see why they would go back on it at this point. It's out there in ink. Everybody knows that you put it in verbal, and now in writing that you want Deontay Wilder for 2018. Now, if they walk back on it, we're going to have to revisit this podcast as far as, the bullshitting and, ducking and all that. But that's how I feel like they're going to go about it. All of them very favorable. And from what I'm seeing with Anthony Joshua, I don't see why they don't pass any of these tests comfortably. And especially with seeing how, like I said, Joshua's defense is actually what I was more noticing in this past fight. And I was very pleased to see how he handled, the activity of Carlos Takam. And for that reason, I am the future's fucking bright. I mean, this guy's getting better.
I mean, look,
the money's rolling in. So
Carlos Takam is the equivalent of an African Amir Mansour. He's a guy who he can make you look bad. He's that kind of guy that you might beat him, but he's going to make you look bad. He did it to Parker. He had Parker on the back foot. Okay? So Anthony Joshua is passing every single test they put him through with flying colors. There's no reason that anybody should be doubting him right now. I think they do fight Wilder in 2018. But we know what Eddie Hearn wants. Eddie Hearn wants the fight to be as big as it possibly can be. That means he wants Wilder to get a profile. At least in the UK, he wants him to be worth some money. Because if you have the fight now, oh yeah, Anthony Joshua might beat him, but you're not going to make as much money off of that fight right now as you do 2 fights down the line. That's what Eddie Hearn is thinking. That's my son in the background. He likes Joseph Parker. He over there talking about Parker's the best heavyweight.
That or he really wants Wilder to build up a fan base in the UK.
I think so. That's why he's pushing black and white. That, and I low-key think that Eddie Hearn is of the opinion that White beats him. I think Eddie Hearn has convinced himself that Dylan White beats Deontay Wilder.
Well, two things. I think for certain, Eddie Hearn is just almost begging for Deontay Wilder to get some type of notoriety within, and I don't even think not even just the UK, but even, fire up the base here in the States.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, there's almost an equal fan base between Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder here in the States.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of a rather. If anything, I feel like Anthony Joshua is actually favored on Ring IQ right now over Deontay Wilder. I feel like it's about 75-25 on Ring IQ right now.
Let's get off the internet and let's say that every guy that tunes into a Deontay Wilder fight already knows who Joseph Parker is. I mean, who already knows who Anthony Joshua is. They know, if you got a Wilder fan, if you're a fan of Deontay Wilder, then you know Anthony Joshua. So that's why it's 50-50 in the States. There's no Deontay Wilder fan that doesn't know Anthony Joshua's name. So just in terms of notoriety, it's down the middle. You don't have an overabundance of Wilder fans, but the ones that you do have, they know Anthony Joshua.
And to the point of Eddie Hearn believing that Dillian White could beat Deontay Wilder, I was under that same belief slightly. And then I just happened, to catch his fight against Salinas, where he was able to get the unanimous decision. Went full 12 rounds. Both guys were definitely at fault for really not capitalizing in this fight. Helenius actually did have some success early. Was able to frustrate Dillian White. Actually had Dillian White looking very awkward at times. And obviously White was using this fight as an opportunity to, force himself in the conversation, and then two, get used to fighting these bigger guys that he's going to have to be getting used to facing, for when it comes to these world titles. And for me, man, White did not look really that great at all. He looked, he was. I mean, if I were to, I was going to say, if I could send a fax. If I could send a fax and Dillian White just began to launch a punch, I'm almost certain the fax and the punch would land at the same time. Like it was that telegraphed, everything that Dillian White was throwing. I mean, there was literally one punch where he threw, literally got caught in between with a left hook, spun around, and by the time he made full rotation, like he was.
Oh, you caught that. I thought I was the only one that caught that.
He got full rotation and it was still like, what in the hell?
Dylan White is bugging out like now.
Like that's the type of shit you see guys who are like sparring for the first few times. Like you ever see your friends are like, you're just throwing some headgear and some shit and just see what they do.
I was the only one that seen that. I'm like, yo, did he just spin himself around throwing a haymaker? Wow, dog. Like,
and he was able, like I said, he was able to frustrate him. He used the jab a little bit. He had him walking into certain punches. And I tell you what, if he had Takam's activity, he probably would have won this fight. Not by the judges, of course. He obviously would have had to fucking save a damn older woman out of fucking Big Ben or something, fly down and then be knighted by Queen Elizabeth.
Let's not just zero in on Dylan White, because at the end of the day, a lot of guys stateside, they don't know Hellenius. Hellenius is actually a very good fighter. Defensively, he's a very good fighter. He's decent. He's a solid B-level fighter. Remember, before that fight, he only lost one fight. Mm-hmm. Freak knockout to Johan Duapis, okay? It looks odd, as good as Hellenius, because he's got good skills, that you lost to Johan Duapis? How the fuck did that happen?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But see, I saw the fight because I didn't even realize, like, this guy lost to Johan Duapis. How the fuck did that happen?
I mean, you can ask that, but then if you look at Deontay Wilder at the end of his fight with Duapis.
True. But I mean, it's Deontay Wilder, though. I don't even use him as a barometer anymore. Behind Washington, I thought Washington was something that he wasn't because of Deontay Wilder. Okay, you know how we felt before the fight because we did a pod about it. We did a whole pod about it, and then we watched the fight, and it's like, wow, Washington's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
No, he's not. Wilder's that bad.
Yeah.
Washington looks good.
No, he's totally PBC to the bone. He's PBC FS1 material.
Hey.
That's FS1 on a Tuesday night.
Bruh, it was nice because we saw. I don't know if you did. I watched some Washington fights. I'm like, okay, this guy. It's the guy. Guy's gonna get knocked out. That's how I felt before the fight. I watched the fight. I'm like, Jesus Christ, this guy's doing great. It's a great jab. He's backing Wilder off. He's cutting his work rate. Like, Wilder doesn't want to throw.
Like, what the hell is going on?
And I watch, then you watch the Miller fight, the Washington Miller fight. It's like, okay, snap back to reality.
Yeah.
Because that's literally what that felt like. Holy crap. He went back to being Gerald Washington. At least the one that I saw before the Wilder fight. Whoever showed up, I don't even think that was Gerald Washington in the ring with Deontay Wilder. Night and day.
Yeah, and it's one of the funniest stoppages though, because literally, once the, of course, with Wilder, swinging for the fences, literally.
Oh, yeah.
And the fight speed stopped off, and Washington. I mean, people were like, I don't know. This is how. Boxing can always, it can always fog your memory on how certain fights end if you just go based off results with what we can remember. But
yeah,
a lot of people will be under the idea like, oh shit, well he must have, had, Washington like really stumbling and, falling apart all over the place. Washington actually walked the fuck away after the fight was waved off. Like right after the fight was waved off, he just like walked back. He just walked back to his damn corner. Like, damn, they stopped it.
I mean, look, a lot of people felt ambivalent about that stoppage. You know, I really had to look to see, was Washington okay? But I saw, you know, I did see that when he got up, he had spaghetti legs. But I had to look for that. Okay, I had to look for that. So if you just glance at a glance, you know, it looks like, well, that was a pretty odd stoppage. I think that that's Wilder's questionable stoppage, because it's like, you know, Washington wasn't knocked clean out. He got up. I had to look at his legs to see if they were steady, and they weren't. They weren't. But that was like after 2, 3 looks, I saw that, like, okay, yeah, this guy's kind of wobbly. Like, he doesn't look stable. So I guess that's what the ref saw.
Well, back to White and his supposed
Hellenius.
well, you know, he got the win. We both agree he didn't look that great.
No, he didn't.
So, I mean, it's only from here on to the future. So, in terms of what he can possibly have lined up next for himself, now it's already being billed and going into this weekend that, you know, with the fights going on with Deontay Wilder and Bermane Stiverne, and of course Dominic Brazil and Molina, that the winner of those two fights will face each other. So that hampers at least the immediate future for White, who I'm assuming was looking forward to having his next fight being Deontay Wilder, you know, in hopes that, you know, Eddie Hearn can have that worked out. Doesn't look likely if this is going to be the case. So, I mean, I feel like that could be a good thing, at least for Dillian White.
We're getting ahead of ourselves, because remember, you know, Ortiz is literally still there at number 2. He hasn't been dropped from the WBC's ranks, so it could end up being Dillian White against Luis Ortiz. It could end up being that way. They've already, you know, they had a meeting. They just literally, Mauricio Suleiman just posted that shit to his Instagram. They had a meeting to come to a conclusion as far as what's going to happen to Luis Ortiz, but they believe him. You know, that they haven't taken his rank away. They believe him. So if he keeps that rank, it might come down to Dillian White versus Luis Ortiz. It might not even be about Dominic Brazil. Might not even be him.
If he
Hey,
I tell you what, the WBC is going to have a terrible time explaining any type of legitimacy, that at least, or any type of just respected reputation. I mean, you already had the whole Povetkin episode this prior year, pretty much leading into this year, and somewhat throughout it now, with Luis Ortiz coming up dirty, and now he somehow still has the ability to fight for the title. After he, well, I mean, it was like, this is like immediate.
This one's more.
He only had like 5 months with Povetkin.
But this one's more. This one is more sorted than that one, because with that one, that guy tested positive for PEDs. You get it? That was indefinitely performance enhancing drugs. Whereas Luis Ortiz's case, whether you believe him or not, he didn't test positive for a PED. He tested positive for something that could be interpreted as a masking agent, but that still doesn't constitute performance enhancing drugs. So it's different, because it's like finding paraphernalia as opposed to finding the smoking gun. You know, the guy tests positive for let's say Osterin. Okay, that's a guy that's on steroids. But a guy tests positive for whatever the fuck Ortiz tested positive for, that could be blood pressure meds just as easily as it's a masking agent. It's open to interpretation. I think it's sketchy. I think it looks bad. I don't trust Luis Ortiz. But conclusively, he didn't test positive for a performance-enhancing drug. That's the reality of it.
You know, I feel like, you know, you already got a history of it, and you already know what items are and are not on the bans list, and for their reasons for them to be there. There's a reason why, you know, Look, it's a bad look overall, just to even explain yourself on why you're even taking that in the first
It's
place.
only
Because
a bad
even if
look
you're trying to
because
validate it, it's like, oh shit, I'm fighting an old fucking man
listen,
that
it's
needs
only a bad look.
heart
It's
medicine.
only a bad look because Ortiz has a history. If up until this point that man never tested dirty, we might have believed him. But we know that, look, dog, you was on steroids before. You got caught before. Now you got caught for some other shit. Might not be a steroid, but I don't trust you. That's the point. Trust has been eliminated. It's just that for the WBC, for the legality of it, he didn't get caught using a performance enhancing drug. He didn't. He got caught using a banned substance. It's apples and oranges. You know, a fucking banned substance could be as simple as fucking Gatorade or something. You know, something like that. That doesn't mean that the night of the fight he would have had a competitive edge for being for having used that drug. And that's why it creates these ripples that, you know what? If Luis Ortiz keeps that rank, he's gonna be number 2 WBC, right? Up until they get Stiverne out of there. You get Stiverne out of there, who's number 1? You get Stiverne out of there, Ortiz is number 1.
It literally does play right into his hands.
It,
But he has to. He has to really do something with this, though. I have the article up right now of the WBA dropping him from their rankings due to the fact that they're involved with VADA as well. So they did recognize the failed results into their own investigation. So that was their explanation for dropping him for the rankings. But the one title that it was actually for has still have him ranked. So go figure that. Well, now that that's out the way, I guess let's get into the weekend now.
yep.
Keeps on Anthony Joshua. Deontay Wilder, Bermane Stiverne, rematch that everyone has been clamming for the
I've
past
been waiting
2
for this
years.
for years.
The most anticipated heavyweight fight in the past decade.
Exactly.
If you listen to TMZ Sports, Jesus Christ.
I've been waiting for I've been tripping over myself waiting for this fucking rematch. You know, this is an important fight.
Definitely a series maker here. If you talk about Pacquiao Marquez, the Thriller in Manila.
Wilder Stiverne.
Just add them to the ranks. So the weigh-in was this past afternoon. Deontay Wilder came in at, what was it, 220, I believe? And yeah, very light. He already is light for a heavyweight, as is. And Bermane Stiverne, I believe, came in at what was it, 270?
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I feel like that's par for the course for him. Typically, the heftier guy, maybe more or less, may play a part into him withstanding, punches, the fight through the 12 rounds again, which, for me isn't out the realm. I don't put this being too far out of the idea of him maybe actually going to 12 rounds again. I don't think he'll win, though. I think he'll actually do a little bit better, and that it does go the distance again.
I'm skeptical because the guy hasn't fought since 2015, right? You haven't fought since 2015. When you did fight in 2015 after that Wilder fight, Derek Rossi put you on your ass. Derek Rossi. So you're coming into this fight heavy, and let's just play with the idea that he is coming in heavy so that he can have a little bit more punch resistance. But you haven't fought since 2015, and isn't that just going to make you slower? More, a little bit more stationary because you're a little bit more heavy, easier to hit, easier to find. Wilder's been keeping busy. He's been fighting people. Whether you like the people he's fighting or not, he is fighting people. So he don't have no rust to shake off. But you do, and you're heavier. It wouldn't surprise me if he knocks this guy out before the half. Wouldn't surprise me.
So, well, I just have this funny idea that I don't know. I mean, I feel like everyone is going with the knockout. Some are actually surprisingly saying it, before the 7th. I don't
It's
know, man.
it's no. I mean, I see. Look, I see what you're getting at because it's like you said that it's not outside the realm of possibility. It's not that he might actually go the distance. It's possible. It's just that look, 2 years not fighting though. 2 years not fighting,
Oh, no, well,
and
yeah, and that's a detriment to his possibilities of actually winning. As far as just making it out through the fight, I feel like, I mean, as long as he remembers how to fucking block at least a few times.
look, two
Um,
years, 2 years of not getting hit, 2 years of not being in that ring and having to deal with those situations.
Now,
You
look, I was gonna say, now listen, I'm not saying that because I do acknowledge the rust of and the layoff of being out of activity for 2 years does definitely. I mean, it's huge, and for that reason, you know, I'm only slightly getting the idea that he could go the distance. For the most part, I feel like most likely about a late stoppage would be the way to go.
hmm hmm
Um, and that's pretty much where, if I were to put all my chips into, one idea of how this fight could go, it would be a late stoppage. But probably throw maybe two chips on it going the distance, you know.
you
Um,
might not be wrong. You might, because it is a grudge match. We know for whatever reason, but Main Stavern really fucking hates Deontay Wilder. Like I don't even get it. Like, okay, he beat you. Like, like chill, dog.
and even in reverse, like Deontay, for some reason, like Stavern gets under his skin. Um, and I think it's more than just the fact that he wasn't able to get the knockout with Stavern. Um, I think maybe that just kicks a little sand in his eye, but
Yeah.
I don't think it. And I think, I don't know, maybe just the fact that he's running with it might be the probably is the main issue he probably has with him. Like that's why these things are talking crazy. Like, oh, I'm gonna kill him. Like, no, I'm gonna kill him. Well, he's gonna need a body bag, and I'm like,
Oh
well,
yeah,
like
yeah.
I ain't leaving until I leave
I
until I have to
almost
step
got
over you.
excited. I almost got excited. Like, yo, this is good shit. I like this shit. Like
Yeah,
these guys
yeah, yeah. It's
could
easy
be
to
a
fall
war.
into that, right? It's
Yeah.
almost as if like you never watched boxing before and never learned this lesson before. Like, oh, shit, man, if I
True.
didn't like fucking fall into that trap, that fucking fight week hype again.
Remember we was talking about Canelo Chavez? That like, you know what I mean? Like, you get all swept up into the bullshit, but the
Mm-hmm.
fight ends up being what the fuck you thought it was. Like,
Right off the bat, yeah. As soon as it was announced, it was exactly the way you thought.
yeah, like, oh, this is gonna be a shit show. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
and yeah. So, I mean, so how do you see it? I mean, if with Deontay Wilder pretty much favorite to obviously to get the win. Um, and the stoppage now is obviously seems to be demanded at this point. Um, if he doesn't get the stoppage or he looks not that great throughout the fight, like the way he did with Washington, and gets a stoppage later,
hmm
um, of course the wounds are going to be so open for criticism.
yeah.
Um, So I mean, what are your expectations here, as far as like what does Deontay Wilder need to do to at least prove that he is as good as says he is, or at least that he is as big of a deal as he believes he is.
Well,
Should I
look,
say?
perception is one thing, performance is another. What Wilder really needs to do, in terms of perception, is he needs to dispatch this guy in better fashion than he did before. He set the bar high for himself because he really did beat the shit out of him. Like he beat the shit out of him. Okay, so that's a part of it that like you really fucked him up, dog. So you've got to surpass that. There's only really one way to do that, and that's to get the guy out of there early. Now, how does he do that? What does he do? Do what you did with Spilka, but do it sooner. Counter this guy. Catch him flush.
Let Bermain get that guy's timing down. Let him open up. Let him throw some punches. Defend yourself, but let that guy start throwing punches so that you can counter those punches. Okay, because if you start throwing punches at him, he's just going to get into a high guard. He's going to go into survival mode, and this is going to end up getting dragged on. You want to get this guy confident enough that he's going to try to fight back, that he's going to start throwing, he's going to start taking chances, basically. Get that guy to take some chances in the early portion of the fight, work off the counter, you can get him out of there. But that's essentially what he has to do. You got to get this guy out of there sooner than later, because anything that's less than what you already did is going to make you look bad. Like, did you actually get worse? You already fought this fucking guy. You had a harder time with him in a rematch than you did in the first fight.
Yeah, and that is a worry if you think about it in terms of tactics. How he won that first fight was obviously the boxing ability that partially won me over, because I thought he was nothing but a fucking, just a swinging fucking 200-pound fighter that just basically meets the qualifications of a heavyweight fighter. He proved that he actually has technique and he can do something. So exactly, that's what I'm saying. It's been a lot to be desired since. But obviously he was on the back foot boxing, like I said. And maybe that played a part into why he wasn't able to get the knockout. He wasn't able to at least to, put so much mustard on the shots the way he wanted to. Mm-hmm. So, that could be the case. And like you were saying, I feel like Stavern's going to be looking to go, like you said, high guard and just looking to walk into the range he needs to get to. Mm-hmm. And therefore, I could definitely see it playing out the way it did before. But what Wilder has to be careful of is to not get so emotional into the, with all this, this pre-fight stuff, and actually just looking to just take him out, obviously by walking forward, but with a lot of shots being blocked. And I feel like if he does go with that option, he could possibly tire himself out. And God knows we don't need to see what he looks like doing that.
One thing that Wilder, that I'll say that he actually, believe it or not, that he has gotten better at is timing the other guy. That's one thing I'll say he's gotten better, or it hasn't changed. That he knows when to throw the right hand. So if he can just bring, if he really did get better, this is a make or break kind of thing. If he really did get better at that, or if that's just my perception of it, then he will get Bermain out of there. If he really did get better at it, because the Spilka fight, terrible fucking situation. Okay, terrible situation with Washington. It wasn't even so much that you worked off the counter to get that, as you felt a sense of urgency because, look, dog, you're fucking losing, okay? I don't care what those judges say. You are fucking losing this fight. So he starts opening up. He hits the gas. In this fight, bait Bermain in. Set some traps. Get him to open up so you can catch him flush and get him out of there. Because I'm telling you, anything outside of that Sunday morning, the Wilder fans are going to have a long fucking day. He has got to knock that fucking guy out.
And that's the that's the worst part. I feel like there's about 90%, pretty much 98% of the pressure is on Deontay Wilder in this fight. Because he has to do everything in the first fight better.
Yep.
And he has to show, I mean, in the whole performance overall, even substantially, he has to look better than in the last fight. And if for any reason he doesn't, get him out of there, or doesn't look good doing it, the criticism will come. And, and at that point, I feel like, should I say, was it allies of Deontay Wilder are going to be forced in a corner.
Well, look, let's
point, because from here, we're just from here until the fight with Anthony Joshua, we are basing each other their fights off the performance.
But
from there to hypothesize who would win.
Let me ask you a question. Wilder goes in there, he has the fight, he wins a decision, he doesn't get the knockout. What does George think?
I mean he has to perform.
This is if it goes down, he don't get the knockout. But he wins, he don't get the knockout. What do you think that says about, a potential Anthony Joshua fight? That okay, this is two comps.
I'll tell you what it screams to me right off the bat. What it screams to me is that when competition steps up, the knockouts tend to evaporate.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they just aren't as prevalent as they are with the competition we've been seeing before.
Mm-hmm.
So that will definitely it'll raise that question as far as the legitimacy of his power.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
If he can't get Bermane Stavern out of there. But again, I'll not being as harsh as that because I can be deemed as a Wilder hater. I'm just more agitated than I am necessarily hating him.
Yo. Yo.
I knew that was gonna happen. Fucking paused out of there. I don't know what left out, but basically, what I was saying was, it's just a lot of pressure for Deontay Wilder to, really like he can't mess up. There's just a lot focused on him, being watched by now with a slightly bigger audience, UK. Anthony Joshua fans are pretty much just sizing up the potential fight of a Deontay Wilder fight. So I mean, all that goes into play where you just cannot look bad at all. So yeah, I mean, even with all that said, I still have Deontay Wilder winning, possibly late stoppage. But that being said, if he doesn't get it done, then I mean, we already know what it's getting at this point. It's just a matter of time. So look at the cat coals of of Deontay Wilder, Windmill Wilder, Beyonce Wilder, all that. So where did Julius go? There he is. All right. Sorry about that, folks. So I feel like we're kind of just wrapping things up now anyway.
There you go. What the fuck happened?
Jesus Christ. Where'd you go?
Where'd you go? I was like, Get the
No, the thing, like, I don't know why this happens. I was actually surprised. The last time I did this, it did like 3 times on me, like just cut me out entirely. But now I was just wrapping up on the point of basically the margin of error for Deontay Wilder is dismal. Like he doesn't have room for error. He has so much pressure to look good, to get the knockout. And with the fact that there is now the UK audience watching him to see, like, all right, so what's the big fucking deal with you? Like all of that. So with that being said, I still have him winning.
I mean, look,
late knockage.
the comfortable assertion is Wilder wins. The question is, how does he win? That's what we're all looking at. That's really the only reason we're even paying attention to the fight at all is, okay, Wilder's got to go out there and if nothing else, at least do what you did before. You did that already. At least do that, because that's up until, really, in all the talks we've had, that's all he's got. They're like, well, he did beat the shit out of Bermane Stiverne, so that's saying something. That's the best guy he fought. Can he do that again? That's how I feel. And, I think for the most part, and I'm not, I get tired of this, oh, you're a Wilder hater. You hate. Get off his dick. Get the fuck off his dick. Shit. Now, I don't hate that guy. I want him to go out there and knock this fucking guy out. Okay? Show up and knock him the fuck out. That's it. Then we can continue to talk about the Joshua fight. Because if you don't knock this guy out, you know what people are going to say? This guy could knock out Bermane Stiverne. He's going to knock out Anthony Joshua. Mm-hmm. That's what they're going to say.
And it's they only have these hopes when it comes to the hypothetical of that Wilder's just this imperious power puncher that it's all up for Anthony Joshua to figure out how to deal with.
Yeah.
Like, for one, first of all, we got to with this fight. The only thing I am actually anticipating with this fight is the fact that it does get to throw some legitimacy to Deontay Wilder's power. We will necessarily figure out, is a step up in competition what makes a difference? Because how many times does that play the part with damn near every power puncher on the come up?
Numerous times. Well, how long? When's the last time it was one time?
Yeah.
I mean, like, we got examples of this shit all over the place.
I mean, shit. And even we don't even need to go that far. I mean, the fucking Gennady Golovkin has been,
I hate to say it. I think it's his fault. He didn't go to the body in that fight, but that's another part.
Yeah, and you know what? And I do feel like that is a little bit different because I feel like he would have probably set up the whole strategy of attack. He probably had a better success. And that's still not to say that he doesn't hurt guys at this point. There was just certain shots I did see that he landed on Canelo I thought was totally going to have him at least say, like, Canelo buck a little bit, which he did a little bit, but then, snapped right back out of it.
George, don't do it. I'm not getting sucked into that shit. I said what I thought about the fight, and it's done. I'm not gonna let that fight hurt my ass. Okay? That's it. Because it bothers me. I'm like, come on, dog. You're telling me you think Canelo? All right, bro.
All right, yeah. There's no need for that. And speaking of that fight, it is word that Adelaide Bird is now back in the work.
Oh yeah, no, she was on a Mayweather card, I think.
Yeah,
a TMT card.
Yeah. So so much for a harsh punishment, right?
Well, look. This is boxing, right? And in boxing, people tend to forget, and I've talked about this. I know I talked about it on the relay, that the Floyd Mayweather era it made people forget, you don't want this thing to go to the cards. You don't want the judges to tell you who won. The Mayweather era, because Mayweather was able to consistently outbox a lot of guys throughout a 12-round fight, people started thinking of that as something that is doable. And they kind of forgot that, like, you know what? You actually don't want these judges scoring your fucking fight. Because, funny shit happens all the time, dog. You want to go in there and you want to get this guy out. If you can get him out of there, I'm not saying go after the knockout. That's bad advice. I'm just saying that people forgot that, like, you know, judges, they do fuck it up, okay? Sports Illustrated, robbed, okay? You remember that? Pernell Whitaker, okay? It, like, you don't want these fucking judges telling you who won the fucking fight. Letterman, you know, Letterman is a perfect example of why you don't want someone interpreting the fight for you. You know, I know what Letterman is looking for. It's just that, you know, that's you, bro. Other guys don't score it that way.
And that's that it is the shame. The biggest shame with boxing is that it, just like NBA refs, it is all interpretation of the rules.
It is.
It's like, well, hey, I'm going to call a more physical game. Like, what do you mean you're going to call a more physical game? The sport is what it is. If it's physical or not, you call it for what it is. And like, oh, I'm not going to condition the game. No, I'm just going to call it by what it is on the books. You know what I mean? There's like damn offensive charges or whatever. One day they were blocking foul, the next it's a charge. You know what the?
I go off of what is more prevalent than what is not. You know, that's how I like to score the fight. I like to keep the judges in mind when I'm scoring the rounds, because it's not just what I thought, but what are they gonna say because they're watching the fight. And that's how I figure, you know, this is not a 9-3 fight for Canelo, for example. Well, for Golovkin. Upon watching the fight, as I'm scoring the fight, I'm like, you know, no way this thing is 9-3. This is at least a 4. It looked like 9-3. I scored 9-3, but I'm like, this is wrong. Like, there's at least one swing round in here, and Canelo's gonna get a swing round, so I'll call it a 4. And that's the thing about boxing, that, okay, so you want to know, how should you be scoring a fight? Look at what happens more often than not. If you're giving up real estate, that's working against you. So how do you turn the tide on that? Counterpunching. You know, that, okay, yeah, I'm giving up real estate, I'm circling away, but when this guy comes inside, I'm lighting him the fuck up. That wasn't really happening often enough for you to give it to Canelo. Every so often, yeah, he landed a hard shot. But don't act like you're not emotionally invested, so you're blowing these things out of proportion. There are 2 full minutes. I think in the 10th, this guy does absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all.
But circle away. And you think, oh, that's defense. You got to score defense. Like, no, bruh. They didn't come here to circle away from each other. They came here to punch each other. Defense is a part of it, yeah. But you're not just here, and you can't just win the round by circling away. That makes absolutely no sense.
And you can't totally just ignore that, the fact that a jab is being landed almost every point, like every damn 2 to 3 seconds in between all of this movement. It's like you can't just look off a jab just because it didn't fucking rock his head back.
I mean, the only way it works out, in my opinion, this is my opinion, the only way it works out to where a guy can win a round with, you know, basically just circling away off of complete defense, is if the other guy isn't landing at all. If he's not landing, but Golovkin is landing. Even if it's just a fucking jab, he's still landing. Okay? He's still landing. So your defense can't be that great when that jab keeps fucking finding you. Okay? It can't be great. Let's put it this way. It's not great enough that you should be winning these rounds. Okay? But that we done got sucked into the bullshit, because now we're talking about that. I don't want to talk about that fight.
Yeah, I don't know how we even got there. Oh no, we were talking about legitimate power punching. That's how we got there. Yeah, all right. So that being said, I mean, I think that pretty much leaves it as it is. We were both in agreement that Deontay Wilder should win this fight. We're picking him to win this fight. I don't know about you. Was that what, late stoppage for you?
I don't know about a late stoppage. My spider sense says it could happen at or around the mid portion of the fight. Deontay Wilder, remember, these guys are emotional. These guys don't like each other. If he hits the gas, he's hitting the gas on a guy that ain't fought in 2 years. So it could happen before the half. It could happen. Wilder could go home early and get back on Instagram.
Right, with his fucking no hang time having ass brain. That fucking looking like Roger Klutz from Doug.
What the fuck is going on the top of Wilder's head? I don't want to understand.
Yeah, I remember. Didn't he have like extensions last year?
Yeah, like, that shit lasted 2 seconds, bro. He had the shits and he didn't have
He
them.
like
Like,
yeah, he went from a Caesar to fucking Lennox Lewis dreads
no,
within a
it looked more
weekend.
like Shannon Briggs without the peroxide.
Yeah. True.
Because
Yeah,
Shannon
because
Briggs
he
used
had
to
that
have
skin tight fade on.
he had a fade on the side and dreads on the top. So it was like, oh, I look like yeah, it looked like Shannon.
Oh boy. All right, so just to briefly mention some of these undercard fights, Dominic Brazil, Molina will square off in the co-main event, and or no, I think that's actually not part of the co-main event. Actually, the Sean Porter and Adrian Granados fight is part of the co-main, and then the heavyweight showdown just before that. Um, Anything in particular with any of these fighters that you're looking for, or more excited to see, or very just even slightly interested in seeing?
Okay, with Dominic Brazil, I want him to show me. I think he can beat Molina. It's not even that. Or for the toughness that Dominic Brazil showed in losing to Anthony Joshua. I see he's a decent fighter. He could take a punch. He could take a beating, and he's tough. But what I want to see now is I want to see growth. Like, all right, you upset the plans for Izu. I thought Izu was going to beat you, and you were getting beat, but you made it through that. And now I want to see, okay, can we start looking at Dominic Brazil as a real world level, some kind of skill? Because essentially the way Brazil beat Izu was, well, this guy can get hit, and this guy was just punching you basically till he got tired. That's literally how he won. Like,
Yeah, I mean, in the same sense with Mansoor.
yeah, it's like this guy's beating the shit out of you, but you're tough and you can take it. So you won, the battle. I guess, for lack of a better word, the battle of attrition. I can take it. Like, but can you? I can take it, but can you? But I want to see
Yo,
some growth. I
it
want to see
reminds me of Homer Simpson.
because this is fucking Eric Molina, dog. This is not Carlos Takam. This is not Andy Ruiz. This is not Amir Mansour per se. Even though I felt Mansour, if that fight would have kept going, Mansour would have beat him.
Oh, for sure, definitely.
He would have beat him. He would have beat him. I want to see, like, show something, Brazil. Just show me something. Show me a fucking jab, something. Because it's like, Brazil. The reason that fight was so fun to watch is because Izu came to fight. Izu, he commits to the body. He'll sit there and throw 6 punches at your stomach. He's out of his mind. Like, I don't know why you putting that many punches together down there, but you need to chill. And that's what made the fight fun, that Izu was trying to make a statement because he just had got signed to Heyman. A lot of people forget that. He had literally just got signed to Al Heyman. So it's like, I get why he's trying to put on a show, and that's what made the fight good. Brazil was normal Brazil. He's getting hit a lot. He's throwing these really slow punches. He's not, in terms of activity, he's not doing a lot in between these combinations that Izu is throwing. I just want him to show that you got a little better. That's all I got. Now, it comes to Porter, I think that's going to be a fun fight. I know a lot of people were critical about that fight, but I think it's going to be a fun fight. Those are two tough guys. Granados is a tough guy. He's not the poster child for pressure fighters, but that is what he does. He applies pressure. So if you like Sean Porter fights, some people don't because, they're boxing snobs. Like, he doesn't have the skill. He just comes forward. He smothers his, if you don't like Porter, then you might not like the fight. But I think that's going to be a treat. I think it's going to be a real down and dirty, gritty fucking fight. And I think Porter's going to stop that guy. Because that's, even though it's funny because Granados is taller, but it's big train, little train. And we know that Porter's the naturally bigger guy. And he has elite level pressure fighting and conditioning. And I don't care who it is. If you're opposite Sean Porter in the ring, you're going to have to work. I don't care if it's Errol Spence. You're going to have to work. He's going to make you work.
Yeah, and like you said, he's not the traditional pressure fighter. He's not your textbook pressure fighter. So if anything, he's probably quite the, some will actually even debate that if it's even effective, or if he gets the proper usage out of his pressure.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, you are forced to fight
Yeah.
every second of the fight or every second of the round when it comes to fighting him. He will demand, he will totally invade your space, even if it's for the sake of hampering him, which, you know, as he was definitely guilty with, I felt like, in the Thurman fight.
Yeah.
But yeah, for certain, I definitely know that. I mean, while it's, I mean, I'm not giddy about this fight. I do see it being a pretty damn entertaining one.
Yeah.
And even it's always, you know, it's always fun to watch a fight where you don't really have that much of a dog in the fight.
Yeah, we don't have to. You don't have to score a Sean Porter fight.
Yeah,
You don't got.
I mean,
Not one of those.
I don't. Yeah, I'm not even big on scoring the fights. You know, like a big fight initially. Anyway, like people who were like scoring Ward Kovalev initially. I'm like, I don't know how the like, I don't even. I didn't even have the nerve just to do that. And like even with the other admins in the chat in between the rounds and whatnot, like, oh, I just got like, yo, how are y'all like talking right now? Just shut the fuck up and enjoy the fight. What are you doing?
I scored that fight, and people kept asking me, you know, how the fuck do you give rounds to, like, how? I'm like, well, look, Ward's not backing off. He's in the fight. So since he's not backing off and Kova's not backing off, what does it come to? Who's landing? Who's landing better shots, and who's landing those shots more often? Porter, it's, you know, depending on who's opposite Porter, you ain't got to score the fight, man. You ain't got to do that. Just watch the fucking thing.
Basically, yeah. And in terms with Dominic Brazil, like just like you, man, I just hope he shows some form of improvement, just so that I mean, some of these, like the one with Mansoor, man, like I know everyone knows he didn't deserve to win that fight.
Nope.
But in the hopes that he got, so in the fact that he got that scalp, I was just hoping that, all right, maybe you can build on this, show that, you know, you weren't just, you know, some luck of the draw type bullshit, that, you
because
know,
that's what it feels like.
And that's what I'm saying. Yes, even with this last fight. So it's like I want him to just, yo, put some like legitimacy into your stature, like yo, because I feel like at this point he's just like an in between kind of fighter right now. Like, is he a journeyman, or is he like somewhat respectable for like the nation or something, or like
what's crazy about it? He fights like he's a fucking journeyman.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I mean, and it's not like he had a development. Like, he actually had some clout around him when he was coming up. You know, like him being the ex-football player, and how like he had a good head on his shoulders, and how, you know,
bro,
basically like, oh well, all of our American heavyweights went to football, so I'm going from football back to boxing, and you know, like all that, that hype. And he fights like a football player.
He fights like a fucking journeyman, dog. That's I never thought about it, but that's why I'm hoping, like, can you please show me something new, because he fights like a journeyman, and you only lost once, and that was Joshua. But you watch Dominic Brazil consistently, even before the Mansoor fight, and it's like, yo, this guy fights like he's a fucking journeyman. Like, what are you, tired? What, you tired of boxing already?
There's no interest in fighting anymore.
You're like,
they have the interest beat out of him. every fight just got like slow determined.
Like, it's like you're tired already, like.
Like, you almost get the idea that like Heyman's just slipping like letters under his door, like, here's your next opponent. No, I'm done fighting.
I don't want to. He's like the fucking Eeyore. If you had to characterize his performances, it's like the Eeyore of boxing. Like, okay,
all right, I'll fight
all right, with
it. Okay, I guess I'll fight him.
Real shit. It's like he just, and it's like, look, Dylan White, for example, he's got a lot of personality, and that shows in his, whereas Dominic Brazil's personality is literally like, it shows in the way that, like, okay, it's like this innocuous heavyweight. Like, for you to be innocuous
and be a heavyweight at the same time. It's like, are you sure you're in the right sport?
Yeah. It's like, shit, put your ass back on the defensive line. Gee.
Yeah, I know.
Shit. Go back to being just another big nigga. Just taking those.
Yeah, no, real shit. It's like, yo, you big, but it's like you don't do nothing with the bigness, you know, and
just straight up Dwight Howard.
And he's an American heavyweight. You know, if this guy was from fucking, you know, Norway or somewhere up there where it's fucking cold, where the Dimitrinkos come from, I'd say, okay, well, that's, you know, there's guys like that. But this is an American heavyweight that is just completely innocuous. It's like, this is not normal, dog. Like, please show me something. Show me that you want it, because it's Molina, okay? It's not some, you know, some guy. It's fucking Eric Molina. You should be able to have fun with this guy. You should.
Now, you know what's really going to happen, though?
What do you think is going to happen?
This is going to be a firefight. It's gonna.
What kind of fight?
It's
gonna, matches.
It's actually going to be. They're both going to be exchanging bombs, and Molina's going to tire out, and Brazil's just going to happen to be there, still standing, and it just happens to turn around and see like Molina just. Oh,
shit.
Okay. And it's just gonna be just like this. Oh, okay.
I should hit the guy now.
There's the knockout.
I should hit the guy now.
I can hit him now, right?
It's okay to hit him. Hit the fucking
hit the motherfucker. His corner. Hit the motherfucker.
His corner's probably gonna be throwing more punches than he is.
It's crazy.
Real shit.
God. Please, Brazil, man, just like listen, you've beaten people you've probably shouldn't have beaten.
Yep.
Do them the favor.
Yeah.
And just do good. Do good. I'm not even saying get the knockout. Do good.
You stand Amir Mansour next to Dominic Brazil. You don't tell anybody their age. They're going to think Mansour's the young guy.
Yeah.
He's the young guy. Like, yo, that's the 40-year-old. No? What?
What? You mean that guy in the khaki suit is the younger one? You mean the guy in the khaki three-piece is the younger one?
Oh, shit. Because he just has this suburban dad.
Right? Like, just that New England dad feel. Walking, just walking his dog on a Sunday.
What's going on, Sally? I could see him waving to his Asian neighbors, like, "Hey, what's going on?"
Listening to Chicago on a Sunday afternoon.
Or Peter Cetera. It was from a long time ago.
Right. Oh man.
But yeah, just do something, Brazil. Hit the guy. If you don't do nothing else, it's Eric fucking Molina, for God's sake.
The drummer boy.
The drummer
fucking
boy.
Science teacher or whatever the
science?
He was a teacher of some sort.
You sure we're not talking about Jeff Horn?
No. It's not Jeff Horn. Like it's legit. He's a teacher. I think he's a music teacher.
Holy shit. Yeah, that makes sense. Drummer boy, he plays the drums. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh God, what if Molina wins?
That's what I'm saying, man. That's what I'm saying. This fight's gonna be competitive. It's gonna be competitive. Watch, I'm telling you. It's gonna be a firefight that he survives again. And yo, I'm telling you. I'm messaging you right after, like, as soon as the fight's going down, I'm messaging you. I'm watching me be like, holy shit, you were right. This shit's gonna look like Bo Holyfield, like downgraded to sea level.
This is gonna be microwave dinner of Bo Holyfield.
Yeah, this is the hungry man. This is the hungry man version of Bo Bo versus Holyfield.
Oh my God. Oh God. But what if Molina wins? Oh, what am I gonna do? I don't want to.
Like I'll slightly be upset, and it's not even going to be for Brazil. It's going to be for Mansoor. It's like, hey, my
Yeah.
bad, bro.
Well, for me, it's gonna be Izu because I'm like, yo, I was hype off Izu. Like, yo, this guy's gonna be somebody. What happens? He gets knocked out. Like, like, no, you fucked it up. What did you do?
Right? It's almost like like one of those like Hartford dads has a son that's just like a fuck up. It's like you're supposed to be my legacy.
You heard? Like, you fucked it up. It's
You
like that
fucked up
scene
my
from
name.
8 Mile when Kim Basinger starts fuck. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? Get out of my fucking house! Like, you fucked it all up for me.
You fucked up everything.
Oh,
Oh shit. Oh my god. Too much fun.
Oh,
So is that
oh,
everything? I think we covered it all. That's the
yeah, I mean that's everything.
two warm-ups. I mean, yeah, that's pretty much is about it. So here's to hopefully a good weekend of fights. And not only just those fights are coming up. I believe Better Beef does fight the following week.
Yep.
Against some Coling, some Enrico Coling. I don't know. If I said that
Bivol's
right.
fighting tomorrow, but Bivol's already champion, so it's like, well, who gives a shit then? You know, if the fight is like, it's not for the vacant title. You know, like he's literally already.
Like he already won it.
Yeah, like he already got it. Like, so I don't. It's about as ignominious as a title fight could get. Like, well, you know, he's already the champion. Well, they didn't fight yet. Well, it's a WBA.
Yeah,
They
right.
elevate guys all the
I
time.
mean, yeah. Right.
They elevated Keith Thurman, remember?
Right, for super status.
Super.
So also coming up, we got Liam Smith is also fighting on the weekend of the 11th. So with this Veterans Day, they actually awarded me the day off. I was supposed to work that day. That's supposed to be my holiday for the month. They said they got too many heads for Veterans Day. So I'm like, all right. Even though I do like that holiday pay though, for like holiday. Not to say I don't acknowledge the holiday, but like, I mean, what am I doing on Veterans Day?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you celebrate Veterans Day. Like, what do you do?
Exactly. You know what I mean? Other than like probably go to my grandfather's gravesite or some shit like that, but that would be it.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's if you have Army in the family. If you don't have Army in the family, what do you do?
Exactly.
Stub your toe on the, you know, I don't know. I don't know.
Thank the bed frame for your service.
I guess, like, I don't know, man. There's too many fucking holidays.
Yeah, there's a lot that the bank actually recognizes, but you know, that's what I'm saying. If I hardly acknowledge them and I can work it, total for it technically to be holiday pay, I'm taking it.
You know, there should be, you know, it's not that there are too many holidays, it's that the wrong things have holidays. There should be a Boxing Day. Australia has one. We should have one.
No, there actually is a Boxing Day, but it's actually not in the boxing that you're thinking of. Well, it's actually in terms of a box, as in like gift boxing up. Oh man, I used to know exactly the term for it. It was for like, I think it's kind of like the gist of like a Black Friday kind of thing. Where they fuck. I can't remember it right now.
Hey, I'm talking about like the Australians have a Boxing Day. We should have a Boxing Day. They got one. Shit.
Speaking of UK,
that'd be a great
holiday. Oh yeah, are you kidding me?
He's an American icon.
Well, you do got to realize an American icon, or at least Americans celebrating, calling it Ali Day, probably is going to get some type of pushback from a certain segment of the population. But you know, fuck them.
Look, a certain segment
the population doesn't believe in Jesus Christ, but they still celebrate Christmas.
That's true.
Well, they don't, but the country does.
It's true.
So
and while we were speaking on the whole UK thing, Josh Taylor is fighting Miguel Vasquez also next week. That's probably at least one of my favorite UK fighters right now. Sharp as a fucking tack.
Yep.
And also Daniel Jacobs, who will be fighting for the first time under his new promoter banner and new network, HBO. And HBO, who's kind of putting their foot right back in the game. It looked like they were left for dead as far as boxing goes, but
I was shocked because I thought HBO was trying to wash their hands of boxing. It looked like it. They cut their budget in half.
Yeah, but they're saying, like, you know, who was it? I don't know what famous fucking movie it was, but I feel like it's in some type of Danny Glover voice. Like, I ain't dead yet, motherfucker.
I'm too old for this shit.
Too old for this shit, but I'm still here kicking. Like that's actually some shit Larry Merchant would say. I'm too old for this shit, Jim.
I miss Larry Merchant.
I really do.
He's so dry. He was like the Sahara Desert of sportscasting. Dry. I don't even like boxing.
Yo, that's what I mean. Like, I grew up on Larry Merchant, so it was always just that dry with humor with the fucking fucked up hair that like some random fighter just happened to put all over him or whatever. So he's like, okay, all right, Jim, Oscar, over here, please. Oscar, please stop talking over here, please. All right, now you knocked out Fernando Vargas. Now you knocked out Fernando Vargas, a young fighter with potential. It's like, Jesus Christ, Larry. I got some celebratory pussy to get to. Please, let's get this going, man. I gotta get showered. Post conference, baby.
On his face after the Hakar
or and God forbid, don't let it be like no Bernard Hopkins or Roy Jones, where they're fresh off that victory, so they got that fresh shit talking going. Baby, I'm number 1 pound for pound, and all that, all that talking. Well, wait a minute, you're not that great.
The look on his face after that fight was like somebody burnt the Thanksgiving turkey. He was just like, Bernard. This is like, Bernard. Bernie. Oh man. Oh, that was gold. That was gold. For all his drawbacks, you gotta like the personalities in boxing. You gotta like Jim Lampley. You might not like the shit that he does, but it's one of those things. Like, how could you not like Jim Lampley?
That's what I'm saying. It's like family. It's like someone who's like, you totally know, like, yo, that totally is like my uncle that just is fucked in the head. But it's trademark. That's him. It's core. It's no front. So you gotta just love it for what it is. Jim Lampley is like, for me, what Jim Lampley is always the type of commentator for me who I feel like, and I say it every time, it's been true for fucking years. It is that he, for me, seems to be like a commentator that wants to have his call like highlight a really big moment in boxing history. Yeah. So like that's why they always try to replay those moments where like George Foreman knocking down Moore. It happened. Yeah. Like he always wants to be tied to something. So like he'll always like he's over enthusiastic with a lot of shit that doesn't really need it, but in hopes that it is a big moment, he wants to be tied to it.
Play a Jim Lampley soundbite. If you're making a montage, right? You're making a montage of great boxing matches. You got fucking You got movie music in the background. It's amplified by Jim Lampley. It is like you can't say that he didn't contribute that to the sport. He adds excitement to the sport, even when there shouldn't be.
Absolutely.
Joe, what's the matter with you?
He's trying to get you off the pod, which is okay. I think we're pretty much at that point in this time. So it's been real. Thank you for joining me, Mr. Fox Fuenteal, blah, 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 blah.
Blah, blah, blah.
And shout out to UK Boxing Group, Ring IQ, the best boxing debate and substantive topics. Everyone there knowing their shit. And of course, please, if you're not, if you don't have the stomach for just some witty banter, neither of those two groups are for you. Let's just say that. Don't take yourself too seriously. G.Alé 6 is where you can catch me on Instagram. Georgie Dampier on Twitter. George Ale Dampier on Facebook. And if you haven't subscribed by now, I don't know what the fuck you're waiting for.
What are you waiting
do
for?
It. I mean, do I got it? I got a full Sarah Michelle Gellar out here with a cardigan around my was it elbows? What are you waiting for?
What are you waiting? What are you waiting for? Michelle Gellar, that was Jennifer Love Hewitt.
Whoever the fuck. I get all those white girls mixed up around that time.
Well, she's got big titties. That's why I know.
Oh.
Jennifer Love Hewitt has some big fucking titties.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, that's right. You know what? Yeah, I just saw a picture of her recently. Jesus Christ.
Big fucking, and I'm not even a titty guy, but I'm not. It's not the 80s, man. Titties is all right, but it's not the 80s. But she has some big fucking titties. But she's got that old white girl neck, though. Her neck is just like really fucking long.
Like gizzardy? Like does she look like something you might have to prepare for Thanksgiving type shit?
You know, it's because she's got hair and the hair covers her neck. But if she wears it up, she looks like, like how Klitschko did when he caught that uppercut. Like
just everything. Everything.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Next, but she's cute though. She's got big titties.
All right, Mr. Ring IQ Boxing Talk on YouTube. Got any other shout outs you want to give before we get the fuck up out of here?
Let's see. Who do I want to shout out? Shout out to China something. She's a boxer. She's about 2-0. She was actually at the fight where Robert Garcia got arrested. She told me they was bugging out. Like, nah, she's surprised that Robert Garcia was acting the way that he did, yada, yada, yada. She's hot, too, so shout out to her.
Yeah, and, free Garcia. Everybody get your T-shirts out. Free Garcia. And shout out to Mr. Bo Bland, who actually just wrapped up a pretty in-depth interview. So if you guys are tied to the channel, of course, go over there, give a peep, go peep that interview. And Mr. Ibn Daoud, who's not here with us today, is continuing doing the Papa Woods, like Papa Woods treatment with his son Salim, who's the young prodigy, recently nicknamed the Surgeon. Actually, I just saw him got him some pretty dope looking trunks, man. So I'm expecting big things from the guy. He's always going to get some good competition around here. So we will be, speaking of competition, we'll be hoping to get Ibn back in, obviously on the pod, where we can get back to ripping them to shreds. All right. So till next time, folks. Peace.